You know what? I think we're in a time where we are getting actual decent movie adaptations. At least the ones that were well known that were adapted. Remember when those didn't work back in the day? Yeah, it was a strange time. So I guess Hollywood got cold feet back then and decided that they were not gonna make any more adaptations anymore. But if you ask me, I think what made them confident to make adaptations again was probably the Lego Movie. That movie received really well reviews by everyone, and everyone really liked it. In fact, I think Hollywood saw the potential of making anything that was popular and just make it into a movie. Well, I guess they were a little too confident with it. But video game adaptations were no different. But in recent years, we actually got some that were appealing to the general audience. Yeah, even video game movies didn't really appeal to anyone back then. But there are some that people seem to like at least. So today, I'm going to review and rank 7 video game movies that I picked out, and these are the ones that I'm gonna review. And if you're wondering why I included these ones but not the other ones like Mortal Kombat, Ratchet & Clank, or Resident Evil, well, it's because I don't really care about them as much. These are the ones that sort of have everyone talking, and if we're being honest, you were probably around when all of these movies came out. I mean, at least I hope so. To be honest, this is probably gonna be my most biased video I made because these movies did have a special place in my heart throughout all of the movies, and also in preparation for the third Sonic movie coming out. Growing up, playing video games was also a part of my life too, and seeing all of these games being turned into a movie is just so surreal to me. So, as I talk about each of them, I'm also gonna tell you my experience with all of them and how I felt after watching them. So yeah, enough of this intro, let's start with the first video game movie, which is... Alright, this one is gonna be a personal one, but I still find the Angry Birds movie to be a pretty decent video game movie, based on the mobile game of the same name. Apparently Angry Birds got so big that it got an animated movie released in 2016. Now, remember when I said earlier that this video might be my most biased one yet? Well, this movie explains why. Because if you know me in real life, or you don't know me at all, the Angry Birds mobile game and the franchise itself was a huge part of my life growing up. I played all the games, I collected the plushies, I even have a slingshot that was made by my dad after this movie came out, which I still have to this day. And speaking of the movie, this movie was probably the most exciting thing I have ever been for a movie throughout my 11 years of life. Like, I remember when this movie was coming out, and whenever they played a commercial for when the movie was coming, me and my brother would get really excited because we were finally getting an Angry Birds movie. And let me tell you, after walking out of the movie for the first time, I was walking out with a smile on my face, and I wanted to go back and watch it again. And during that same year, I rewatched the Angry Birds movie countless times during that summer to the point where I remember every line from the movie. Alright, let's talk about the movie. Like I said, it is still a pretty decent video game movie in my opinion, but this movie isn't perfect because there are things that I've noticed after watching it a lot over the years. For one, the story is pretty stale and it doesn't really leave anyone with any lasting impression. And it just feels like nothing as a result, if we're being honest. Which I understand because there isn't really much of a story to tell for an Angry Birds game. And adapting that into a movie must have been challenging to do to have a narrative. Red, our main character, has a temper issue as you couldn't already guess. He goes to anger management where he meets Chuck, Bum, Matilda, and Terrence. And then a group of pigs showed up to their island. I do like the dynamic between Red, Chuck, and Bum. It's just really fun seeing them together, and with them having character traits feels pretty refreshing. I also like that they put some of the source material from the games into the movie. And I do like the world building they have in these movies because each island is a different species like Bird Island and Piggy Island. I don't know, I just like that aspect of these movies. Plus, there is some adult humor that went over my head when I was younger that I didn't care to understand, but watching it now is,
Ladies, get busy! We're gonna be laying some eggs tonight!
And plus, I didn't really mind that the birds have limbs in the movie because I remember when they first showed the birds what they were gonna look like in the movie, I didn't really mind it too much. To be fair, I think that some people were a bit turned off by these designs, but then again, a lot of people didn't really mind it. And plus, Mighty Eagle was pretty underused, but I think his appearance in the movie wasn't bad, so he's just there. I would say the same with the pigs too. They were amusing for the most part, but I feel like they didn't really come up as threatening, and they were just there to like hang out and just do stuff with the birds so they can have them distracted so they can steal the eggs, and I feel like it didn't really develop as well. But whatever, I really liked the slingshot bit in the film at least, where they were launching all the birds and stuff. This was pretty cool to see every time I watch it. Plus, I think this one has one of the most underrated soundtracks out of all of the movies that I've listed. It just sounds so good for some reason, and it's pretty memorable to me. And for some reason, I wasn't aware that after this movie's release that it was very political for some reason. Like, what made this movie about birds and pigs based on the mobile game so political? Okay, that's very concerning. Another thing that I've noticed that was pretty obvious to me was that since I've seen this movie a lot, the pacing goes by really fast. I think not a lot of people are gonna feel the same way that I do, but it's just something that I've noticed every time I watch this movie. Like, I can watch this movie in whatever mood I'm in, and it could just feel like 5 minutes went by with the movie for me. But that's my problem since I've seen this movie so many times over the years, but I don't really care. But with all that said, I still find it to be a pretty decent video game adaptation, and it's one of my personal favorites. It's not perfect, but I still find it to be mostly faithful to the games at least. Alright, what's the next one that we gotta look at? Now, I almost didn't want to add this movie in here, because I feel like a lot of people forgot about this movie even existed. And plus, I haven't really watched it again since I saw it in theaters back when it first came out in 2019. I mean, I've never been a fan of Pokemon, nor have I ever got into it, but I do know the basic understanding of this franchise. Plus, I do remember I was looking forward to this ever since I saw the first trailer when I saw Pikachu talk. That's what sold me into watching it. But after rewatching it after all these years again, it was pretty decent. I enjoyed it for the most part. I do like the world building on how all of the Pokemon characters fit really well into the world, and they look visually great and also kinda accurate to how they look in the show, or game, or whatever they are part of. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Pokemon that much. I feel like Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu was kind of hit or miss for me, because his line delivery in this movie is more like something that Deadpool would say, and him showing up at the end kinda made me laugh. I think it was supposed to be a sentimental ending, but I couldn't take it seriously. Plus, the main character Tim was an okay character. He's not terrible, but I thought he was pretty interesting to watch to say the least, but he's just mostly not that memorable. And Catherine Newton's character was kind of underused, and I think they tried to attempt the love interest thing, but it didn't really come all that together by the end, but I guess that's okay. But yeah, there isn't really much that doesn't really feel like a Pokemon movie, but I'm okay with that. But I'm glad that this movie did its own thing and created a story that was somewhat engaging to watch. And also the soundtrack of the movie is actually pretty good. It just has that retro video game sound to it that I just really like, and it fits with the tone of the movie as well. But yeah, the action was pretty cool to watch. I wish there was more of it, but I didn't really mind what we had here. Yeah, I didn't really have much to say about Detective Pikachu. It's a fun movie, and I'm still curious about that sequel that has been in development for a while. Now, I was just as excited for the Angry Birds movie 2 than I was for the first movie. I was pretty excited when I was on my way to see it, and when I walked out of the movie, I felt nothing. Yeah, I don't know what it was. But for some reason, I just wasn't satisfied with how this sequel turned out. It had pretty decent reviews online, and every review I saw for this sequel either said it's better than the first one, or it's more entertaining. But to me, since I was a fan of this franchise, I didn't really get much out of it. Alright, let me tell you all the things that I did like about this sequel. I really like the concept about this third island threatening to destroy both Bird and Pig Island called Eagle Island, run by a new antagonist named Zeta, and she also has a pretty cool design that I like as well. I like some of the new characters here, even though they were pretty underutilized. I like that Silver is Chuck's sister. I like that they used the slingshot as their new transportation to get to places. The animation is more fluid than the first, and it has some fun moments in here, I guess. Okay, now with all of that positive stuff out of the way, this movie just completely retconned the first movie. I don't really like the birds and pigs teamed up, which sort of defeats the purpose of what Angry Birds was supposed to be. And in this scene when Leonard tries to convince Red to team up with him to save their island, Red just sort of goes with it, without giving it a second thought. I don't like that they keep cutting back to this subplot where the hatchlings are trying to save these eggs. I would have enjoyed this subplot more if these 3 random hatchlings were replaced by the blues. But that was a missed opportunity. And plus, remember when the blues was this mother in the first movie? Nope, for some reason in the second movie, it's replaced by this bird. He was this bird who had a bunch of kids in that one scene in the first movie. Why did they do this? I don't know, but it still annoyed me to this day. And there's just so much licensed music used in the movie, and there's a scene where they played 3 licensed music in just under 1 minute. But yeah, enough about me complaining about this movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I see why a lot of other people like it. But to me, it personally makes me upset because they had so many opportunities that they had with how they would have followed this up with the first movie. But yeah, other than that, in some days, I can enjoy this movie for what it is, and in some, I don't really. But anyways, the Angry Birds movie 2 was fine at best to me, and that's all I'll say. And I really hope this 3rd movie will bring back the charm for what Angry Birds was supposed to be. No more of whatever this was. Why did they have to include this? Alright, now we're getting into another video game franchise that I am also a fan of, Sonic the Hedgehog, with its first movie. No, not that one. There we go. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog might have the most bizarre production out of all of the movies listed on here. It began with a design that people trash online, then getting the biggest redemption that no one saw coming. I'm glad that they went back and changed the design because if it weren't for that design change, we'd probably never gotten these. Now, I wasn't as excited for this one as I was with the first 2 Angry Birds films. I was looking forward to it, but I didn't really feel as excited I was supposed to be. Like, I am a Sonic fan, why I wasn't excited for this one? Well, I came to the realization that the reason that I was excited for the first 2 Angry Birds film was because they had all of the characters that I wanted to see on screen. But with this first Sonic movie, it was just Sonic and some human characters, and also Eggman as well, I guess. But hey, I didn't complain at all. We were still getting a Sonic movie, and that's enough for me. And after walking out of the movie seeing it for the first time, I was a little underwhelmed. I wasn't disappointed, I enjoyed it for the most part, but I feel like there wasn't as much Sonic stuff as I anticipated. But over time, after seeing it a few times, I really seem to appreciate how charming and entertaining this movie is. I really like this new take on Sonic's character in this movie. He acts more like a child, and I think Ben Schwartz's delivery really fits with his personality, and I love it. The story is very simple. Sonic and this human named Tom go on a road trip to San Francisco for Tom to help Sonic find his rings on this building called the Transamerica Building. I had to search that up, by the way. Now, we've seen stories like this before, but if you ask me, this probably did it better than most stories do. It is pretty fast-paced, there are scenes that are fun and memorable, and I think the humor is on point, especially with Jim Carrey's Eggman. He makes me laugh the most, and I think he carries this movie for the most part, and he does a pretty decent job portraying as the character in his own way. Speaking of, I like that these movies do their own thing. Even being live action, it created something new that I liked for Sonic. But would I rather like to see this film if it was fully animated? Well, yeah, but to be honest, I can't really picture an animated Sonic movie now that we've gotten these live action movies, but that's just me. I still find the action in the movie pretty good, especially with how they did it with the ending. That was a pretty cool scene. Now, this movie isn't perfect, not all of the jokes land for me. I feel like the humans sort of overstayed his welcome a bit at the beginning, and there are some filler scenes. But hey, at the end of the day, I will rewatch this movie and I will never not have a fun time with it. Now, this one I was excited for. I would say that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is probably one of the better video game adaptations listed on here. With the inclusion of Tails, Knuckles, the Master Emerald, and more Sonic Adventure stuff in here, it looks like it was gonna top the first one. And after walking out of the movie seeing it for the first time, I was blown away with how well they pulled this one off. Even after seeing it a few times that same year it came out, I still find it to be pretty good. But after a few more rewatches, there are some things that don't really hold up all that well that I've noticed at least. The first thing I want to point out that I haven't really seen anyone point out is that the effects look pretty off. I still think that Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles looks great, and the action stuff is still pretty cool, if not probably better than the first one. but there are some shots that look a bit janky with their movement, and it looks like they haven't been fully rendered. You know this shot where Tails comes out of the ring portal? You know, that scene where we left off from that post-credit scene we saw in the last movie? You can tell that it looks different visually, especially when Tails takes off to go look for Sonic. I compared them both, and it somehow is a bit of a downgrade and it looks unfinished. That always stood out to me every time I watch it. Like, it looks so weird. There are some other shots that look a bit weird too, but I'm not gonna get into it that much, but I think you know where I'm getting at here. Which I'm glad that the third movie is looking much better visually somehow. Plus, there are some pacing issues, with this movie being 2 hours long, though not counting the credits. There are some scenes that are unnecessary, with this dance battle with Sonic and Tails trying to get this map back, which sort of creates a plot hole of like, why doesn't he just have everything in slow motion like he did in that first movie? Which I get it was sort of necessary since Sonic and Tails do need to find a way to bond with each other, and I actually liked this scene when I first saw it, but it sort of bugged me a bit the more I think about it. Plus the wedding scene was just there. It's not the worst scene out of the movie, but it kinda drags a bit and some of the humor with this scene feels forced and it doesn't really land all that well. And I feel like the humans in this didn't really add much to the story as well, but I did like Sonic and Tom's relationship in this movie at least. It was kinda cute. Anyways, those were my complaints that I wanted to point out for a while because they did bug me recently. But with all that out of the way, I still find it to be a pretty good follow-up to the first. I like Sonic and Tails' dynamic in this movie, even though I wish Tails would have done a little more. I really like Knuckles, and the voice that Idris Elba does just fits so well with this version of the character. And he has some pretty funny moments too.
Dot 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 dot.
Like I said, the action sequences are more impactful than the first one, especially with the climax and how everything was leading up to this. It had me pretty satisfied in a way that it had me really excited. Everything about this ending is just so cool. You cannot tell me that seeing Super Sonic in the movie was the coolest thing that a Sonic fan would see. Plus that post-credit scene had everyone excited for what's to come next. Yeah, I still really like this one, and it's a pretty good one in my opinion. Despite some of my complaints from earlier, I still think we're getting a point where we're actually getting pretty good video game adaptations. Now this one I was not expecting to be as excited for it as I was during its release. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is probably one of the biggest video game movies to come out as of late. I did a review of this movie back when it came out, but I didn't really go into detail about the movie as a whole on what I like or dislike about it. But now I can finally go a little in depth about it. When this movie was announced that this was going to be made by Illumination, aka the people that brought you the Despicable Me movies and the Minions, I feel like a lot of people had cold feet, because a lot of their movies don't really have good quality story-wise, and when that cast was announced, it sort of made a laughingstock on the internet for a while. Like, why is Chris Pratt Mario? Why is Jack Black as Bowser? Why is Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong? Now, as I mentioned in my first review of this movie, if you haven't watched it, I never really grew up with these games, nor have I ever got into them. But this movie already had me concerned and how it was being made. The only thing I was concerned about was how it was gonna look. Because if you take a look at a lot of other Illumination movies that came before, they tend to have the same character models to every single one of their movies, and it's kind of distracting. But when the first trailer came out on a Nintendo Direct, a lot of people were very relieved, including me. This looks like this was gonna be the best Illumination movie, and the visuals looks really good? Like, how is this being made by Illumination? Then the second trailer came out, and with that new trailer, that's what got me very excited to see this movie. Even with those directs presenting the trailers, made this movie felt very special during its release. And during that time, it was my most anticipated movie of 2023. And after walking out of the movie seeing it for the first time, it was kind of a letdown to be honest. Yeah, I know that was kind of a hard and left turn, but let me explain. Even though I was let down a bit, I still really enjoyed a lot of stuff about this movie. This movie looks very good with the visuals and the animation, and I love how they incorporated the world into this movie. It looks like it was ripped straight out of the games. Plus, I love that they kept the physics that the Mario games had, with the floating blocks and everything. That's honestly how I'd imagined this movie was gonna be, even before the trailer was released. I really like the performance that Jack Black does with Bowser. He steals the show out of everyone. and I remember everyone played that Peaches song back when it came out. That song itself was more of a joke song to me, but I don't know, everyone seemed to like it because it was funny, I suppose. And it was Jack Black, so yeah, there's that. While I do like Jack Black the best, everyone else was decent. Chris Pratt as Mario wasn't bad, but I still wish he would have been voiced by any other actor because he doesn't really fit with the character. But he's still not bad here at least. Charlie Day as Luigi fits, Keegan-Michael Key as Toad also fits, I guess. Anya Taylor-Joy was okay as Princess Peach, and Seth Rogen as DK was amusing to say the least. The other thing that really stood out to me that I really didn't expect was the soundtrack. They use a lot of soundtracks from the games added into the movie, and it just fits so perfectly in my opinion. Which makes me wonder, why didn't they do that for the Sonic movie? Because the soundtrack in the Sonic movies weren't really that memorable and it didn't really stand out to me. The thing that this movie really stumbles on is with the story. The movie is pretty fast paced with its runtime, only being an hour and a half. I feel like it didn't really have a lot of time for enough to create an engaging story. I feel like most of it is just an excuse to show all of this Mario stuff with references and Easter eggs. Which I don't really mind, but I feel like they would have incorporated that mixed with a story that is worth telling. But hey, this is a Mario movie, it doesn't really need to have a deep or engaging story, but I'm just asking for the bare minimum. But I do like Mario and Luigi's dynamic in this movie at first, because Luigi just sort of got ripped out of the story for like throughout half of the movie. And it's kind of weird that he kind of just show up at the end, and I feel like they didn't really have that dynamic that Mario and Luigi needed for like that ending to work, which I think that ending is pretty cool, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I still find it to be a mostly fun watch. Even if I think the movie is overrated, I will still rewatch it and never not have a fun time with it. And I can't wait for what the sequel has to offer, and I bet it'll make just as much money as this one did. Well, we made it to the last movie, for now. Plus, I reviewed this movie back when it came out, but you know how opinions do change over time. But yeah, I think the Five Nights at Freddy's movie wasn't that bad. Like, fan of the games or not, I feel like people are being a little too harsh on this one. Sure, it's not really that scary, nor it doesn't have any tension, but to me, I think it's still a treat for fans of the games, and the ones who are interested in that convoluted lore of the games. This movie has been in the works for almost 10 years. It was announced that Warner Bros. Was going to make the movie back in 2015, then Warner Bros. Dropped the project, then it was picked back up by the horror company Blumhouse Productions. So this movie has been in development hell for a short while, but we finally have it, and like I said, this movie is not as bad, nor is it great either. To me, I find it perfectly okay, and I do say that strongly. I thought the story was decent enough. I find it interesting about the narrative that they told with Mike, going back to having the same dream every night looking for clues to who took his little brother that has been taken. I found that to be very interesting the first time I saw it. The production design of this movie is on point with the games, same goes with the animatronics. They look just as accurate as they are from the games. To be honest, this movie is more kind of cute than scary, which sort of takes away from what Five Nights at Freddy's is supposed to be. But I actually like those bits anyway. They were fun to watch. There's also some serious pacing issues. It takes like 45 minutes for the movie for things to start actually happening. And there are some scenes where the girl named Vanessa points out a lot of exposition about the lore for Freddy's, and they do tend to drag a bit. Plus, I still find the MatPat and Corey cameos are still funny to watch. But hey, this movie is for the fans, so it makes sense for him to be in it. But I feel like the ending didn't really have much weight into it. Springtrap shows up, he beats up Mike, and then gets spring-locked by the suit. You know, if you already couldn't tell from where that's from the games. And yeah, that's basically the end of the movie. To be fair, this isn't the worst video game movie to come out. There are way worse that has come out. I find it to be a perfectly okay adaptation to the games that has a lot of stuff to offer for fans of the games. But I'm happy that they enjoyed this. Even for me as a casual fan, I still like it in some ways. But I wish it was scarier and that it wasn't PG-13. But I get it, since there are kids that are also a fan of the games as well. But as a movie, it was alright, but I really hope the sequel adds more into it with the scariness. Alright, we made it to the end, now it's time to rank them all. At my number 7, I got the Angry Birds movie 2. I see why everyone likes it, but personally, it was a letdown. but there are some moments that I liked in it, I guess. At my number 6, I got Five Nights at Freddy's. I think it's really overhated, but I think it wasn't that bad. Some of it was cute and amusing. At my number 5, I got Pokemon Detective Pikachu. A fun movie, but I don't think I will revisit it anytime soon. At my number 4, I got the Angry Birds movie. A personal favorite of mine for obvious reasons, but I think it still holds up and it's a lot of fun to watch. At my number 3, I got the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It has the best looking animation and there is a ton of references that fans of the games will notice, but the story was very underdeveloped. At my number 2, I got Sonic the Hedgehog. It's still a lot of fun, and I really like this new take on Sonic, and Jim Carrey was pretty funny to watch. And my number 1 for now is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I think it's the best video game adaptation so far, from the story to the action and how almost all of it pans out, and despite my complaints of this movie, it's still really great. Let's see if this third movie will take that spot. So there you have it. Let me know which one was your favorite video game adaptation. And be sure to subscribe for future videos like these. And I hope you guys all have a happy holidays this year. Alright, so what's the next lineup for these movies? We got Sonic 3, which looks pretty cool, and stay tuned for my review for that as well. We got the Minecraft movie, which doesn't look bad anymore, but I'm looking forward to it now. We got Five Nights at Freddy's 2, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Angry Birds 3. That one is still surprising to me. Now, which other ones are in the works? Oh, they're making that too, I guess.